Stand up.
Hello there, and happy Friday to you. If you're listening on Friday, the 28th of April, I have Christian Finnegan joining me after returning from Iceland. Haven't talked to him for a couple of weeks. We had a great conversation, as always. We talked about his trip, where he taught us about Iceland and made a lot of jokes. We talked about why he loves NBA basketball and why it's okay to love sports. Maybe not all the time, obsessively, but at least that's our conversation. You can if you want. And, of course, we talked about Tucker Carlson, President Biden's announcement for re-election, and probably other things as well. But that's what I can remember. I can't remember much because last night was the hangout that we have with our stand-up community, subscribers, paid subscribers, get the invite every week. And I got pretty banged up. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a raucous party. Almost 4 hours together last night, and so, sorry this is up late on a Friday. I think I'm going to start doing it before the hangout, because I always think I'm going to get it done, but I really do want to get the show up by midnight, so it's there for you whenever you wake up in the morning, or if you can't sleep, you know who you are. All right, so here it is. Christian Finnegan, of course, hilarious stand-up comedian. If you're not a follower and a fan, become one now. One of the most brilliant, sought-after guests on podcasts like mine. And, of course, he writes a great weekly newsletter, New Music for Old. It's so good. It's original. It's unique. And he is a great person to be doing it. So if you like music, if you like discovering new music or rediscovering old music, go subscribe to newmusicforold.substack.com. Let's get it started right now with Christian Finnegan. Yeah, we got him back. He made it back. They made it back from Iceland for the 50th birthday party, present trip. And from my vantage point, watching and following your and your wife, Cambry's social media, it looked wonderful. We're very happy to have you back, though.
Thank you, Pete. In the words of the Icelandic people,
what an awful, is it an awful language? Does it sound, what does it sound? It sounds awful.
It's beautiful. It's interesting. It's it's a lot of really tight, like, I feel like their mouths never open wide when they talk. Like, everything is really, like, it's very tight-lipped language, it feels like. But, you know, most people there speak English. So mostly my reaction to it is just seeing the town names and then trying to imagine what they could possibly sound like. It is the only country in the world where towns are named by having a cat walk across a keyboard. Just they walk across a computer keyboard, and whatever they step on, that's what they name.
Well, I think that's a very equitable way to name something, though. It's very random, and no one gets honored or hurt, or, you know, because you name it after a guy, and then you find out that he killed cats and children.
Exactly. Milkshake duck, as I believe they call it online.
Is that right?
Have you ever heard the term milkshake duck?
No.
It's based on a cartoon that somebody did probably 10 or 15 years ago, where it's like, we all love Milkshake Duck. He's the funniest thing. And then the next frame is, we regret to inform you that Milkshake Duck is a racist. You know, where it's that thing of like, we all love this person. And then you do a little bit of digging and you find out they're a horrible person.
Yeah. By the way, I wonder if I don't want to go off too far on a tangent. I just wonder if knowing that your reputation, which is a form of currency now more than ever, can be tarnished so easily, if it makes us behave any better.
I think honestly, at this point, it's almost becoming like a needle in a haystack type situation, where it's just like everyone is humiliated on a daily basis now. You know, there's like everybody is, you know, what they call the main character, the Twitter's main character of the day, like whether it's Bean Dad or Wife Guy or any of the various characters that, you know, you wait 48 hours and you just kind of sink back into anonymity. And so, you know, I mean, you can see people now who do genuinely egregious things. They kind of just ride it out, and they just, like Bethany Mandel from a couple weeks ago. It's like, I guarantee you that will not really derail her career. You know, that we talked about it, where she couldn't define woke and she looked like an idiot. And she was,
I was thinking of Bethany Frankel.
Oh, you're thinking the Real Housewife person?
I was like, what did that lady do? No, Bethany Frankel, the woman who couldn't define woke. Yes, I see exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I was thinking more along the lines of like, if you're going to be someone who yells at work and then somebody's going to take out their phone and tape you and you're going to lose your job or, whatever it is, people, I feel like we need to be somewhat more patient with people's behavior. Obviously, if you're an awful person and you're being super racist and that gets caught on camera, you should deserve the
there's like competing impulses. There's the impulse to not react, to sort of rein in your reactions because someone may be taping you. But that is fighting against the impulse that people now have to perform their lives with the knowledge that it's going to be recorded and filmed. And so those things are basically just means that everyone is a phony piece of shit all the time.
My favorite ones, though, I'm not going to lie to you, they're very violent sometimes, but it's when a white person calls a black person the N-word and then that black person beats the shit out of them. And I watch those and imagine being that person. I mean, that's the video. And millions of people watch you just get the shit kicked out of you for saying that. It is definitely a part of my soul that enjoys that kind of thing, that it's not a healthy road to go down. No. It really is not. That does not lead anywhere positive, indulging in that part of your psyche. I saw this woman get really beaten badly and it was disturbing. It started to disturb. I started to feel bad for her and I was like, well, she shouldn't have. But then what is wrong with me? Why am I watching this? This is very bad. And also
it's like, do we really want to start reinforcing the world, reinforcing the idea that this is how these things are to be handled? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all well and good to say, oh, so-and-so said X and therefore they deserve to get punched in the face. Well, what happens when someone comes along who has a different idea of what deserves a face punching than I do? Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. No, it could be a slippery slope and I don't like it, but apparently I do. Okay. Back to Iceland. What are the people like? What is the culture like? Is there any way to talk about, anything that you experienced that you liked, didn't like, uncomfortable with, wanted to adapt to? Have you changed as a person? Are you now Icelandic?
Well, Cambry fit right in visually there. And I did too, to a degree, because it's a lot of, we both kind of have a little bit of that look. It's a lot of Scandinavians there, but there's also one of the historical facts we learned is that early on, like 80% of the men in Iceland were from Norway or Sweden, but 50% of the women in Iceland were from Ireland and they were slaves. Like Irish, they would stop in Ireland and take slaves and then bring them to Iceland. So, obviously there's a lot of Irish genes in there, and people there, they literally can track their families back to like the year 900. They have a document. They were really stringent record keepers, and a lot of the families have not left the island. They've doing the same thing that their ancestors did, just generation after generation. And so you can see sort of this weird lineage. And we had the guy who drove us to the airport at the end. He was saying that like, oh yeah, I can trace my family back 10 generations. And I asked him without any, I wasn't trying to imply anything, but I said, is there pressure from your family to stay here to continue that, like to sort of keep that tradition going? And he says, well, we're not white nationalists. Like he was very clear about that, because that's not where my mind was going. But I could see how, I bet a lot of white nationalists that would be important too. Like we got to keep the bloodline pure and all that. And so he was very, it was cool because it's a very monochromatic. I mean, there are some people of color there, people who come over from other countries, the way, migrant people go to any country, and there were a lot of Polish people there, which I was not aware of, but it's an extremely monochrome culture, but they're very keen on letting you know that it's not, that they're still very welcoming to other people. It's just not a lot of people want to go there or at least want to live there.
Is it true that every Icelandic person you bumped into was like, hey, listen, not a white supremacist. Not they opened
it was a little weird as they would goose step around.
Well, I was going to ask you that. I mean, like, who wants to live in a country that is so far north on the planet that both daylight is short half the year and the temperature is so cold probably much of the year? And why would you want to live there?
Well, I will say it is the most beautiful place I've ever seen in my life. And when I say beautiful, I don't necessarily mean pretty, but I mean awe-inspiring, like breathtaking. Every, 50 yards, you're seeing some view that you've never seen before. And they're all different too. My sort of running joke was that it's like Mother Nature gone off her meds, that it just feels epic. There's these dangerous cliffs, these jagged rocky cliffs, and then a beautiful rainbow next to it. And then a bubbling pool of like geothermal water boiling up from the crust of the earth. And then gorgeous rolling hills, and it's the dichotomy of, a dichotomy might not even be the right word, but just the variance of stuff to look at there is really amazing. And 4 or 5 times in the first couple of days, I just kept saying to Cambry, like, this is so special. This is so special. Like, I feel so lucky to be here. And, that's what the fuck is traveling for. It's great to go to a beach, and the next trip we take will probably be somewhere warm, because we haven't done like a leisure vacation in a number of years. Where we tend to go more for adventure type vacations. But man, that's what you get from traveling, is just the not only just meeting people, but seeing like what the world is capable of, seeing what nature is capable of showing you, the different terrains. I'm not even talking about culture. I'm just talking about literal ground we're standing on. Like, what the world is capable of showing you is, it's amazing.
I love all of that. Did you have any conversations of consequence with Icelandic people about, say, our country or anything else?
No, honestly, I can say that no, like not at all. It might have come up. We were alone the vast majority of the time. We were, we did a self-guided tour where we paid a company to Nordic Visitor, rather, was the name of the company, where they made our hotel reservations and sort of gave us a general outline of what to see over the course of these 8 days. But we rented a car and drove ourselves. And so we were mostly by ourselves the whole time, other than, restaurants and things like that. Nordic Visitor.
And then it's at the bottom, it says, we're not white supremacists.
Yes. I don't know. Very, methinks, whatever, the lady doth protest too much. No, we had one dude. There was one hotel we stayed in that was more of kind of a glorified Airbnb, because it was in a really remote area. And that guy was maybe a little bit chatty. Like, we were there for one night and he had all these instructions about how to use the coffee maker and how to clean our dishes and stuff like that. And he was probably the only Icelandic dude who I spent like more than 10 minutes talking to. And he was very nice, but it was mostly just, he did tell us how to see the Northern Lights, which we got very lucky, because most people don't see them this time of year. But
I saw those pictures.
Yeah, we were there at a very clear night, and it was kind of amazing. We went out and like literally within 5 minutes of being out there, it's like, there they are. And we spent like 20 minutes looking at it. And then we were like, all right,
Sounds like you had a really good time. I love that you said I'm
jam-packed. We packed so much in. It was great.
Did anything click inside of you? Did anything, disconnecting from the normality of life and stepping into such a new place and being there with her? Did anything spiritual happen? Did anything change? Anything open up for you? Or close?
Well, something that happens every time you travel, I think, is you feel very small in a good way, that, your problems and your issues and the things that bother you, they are automatically put in perspective. That is like, oh, wow, here's an entire country that does not give a shit about how many spots I'm not getting at X club. You know what I mean? It's so it can be nice in that sense. It can also be a little bit humbling, where it's like, oh, well, then what am I doing any of this for? If nothing means anything, like, why don't I just move to the middle of nowhere and just, live in a turf house and raise Icelandic horses? Yeah, horses.
I do feel like
I was looking for a plural of horses, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess it's just horses.
I do feel like when you go to a foreign country, there's always at least a moment or longer where you're like, can I live here? Maybe I should live here.
Oh yeah, I didn't have that feeling. I never had that. I definitely had the feeling of like, do I want to come back here? But But yeah, I did not like when I went to Ireland, I 100% felt that way. And in Amsterdam, I felt that way as well. This in Iceland, it's too cold. Like it's not unbearable.
Yeah.
It was fine. It felt like being in like late February, early March in New York City, where you need like a winter coat, but you're not like freezing.
Right.
But yeah, it was lovely, and I had a great time, and I'd love to go back, but I don't see myself relocating to Iceland.
Sounds wonderful. And you've got some Icelandic inspired music in the newsletter. Clearly.
I do. In the paid only newsletter that came out yesterday.
Oh, is that what it was? I pay, so I don't really always
because you're a VIP, Pete.
Decipher the difference. Oh, that's one more I want to ask you about the hot springs, the geysers, the what now did you you said a funny, what was it that you said when you got back? You tried to recreate it, or you were, I don't know, something about a bathtub. Oh no, that was in the newsletter.
Yeah, I had a picture from the movie of people bathing in a sink.
It's funny.
But honestly, that may have been one of the coolest things about it. We went to 3 different geothermal springs because I learned a lot about, I'm not a person who really cares about geology and things like that, but we learned a lot about volcanoes because the whole island is basically a volcanic eruption. It's basically a new piece of ground that is, compared to the rest of the continents, extremely young. And so that's why not a lot grows there. And a lot of it's just frozen volcanic rock and with sort of moss covering it. But there are these hot spots around the world, kind of like shafts of lava that come up from the Earth's core. And Iceland is basically formed by one of them. And so it boils water. So there's just these, you can Google geothermal pools. You don't need to listen to me babble through it. But as a result, they have these just unbelievably, not even warm, hot pools of water that people can go swimming in. And it's really, it's so amazing because it's be 35, 40 degrees outside and you're boiling hot, and we went to one's called Blue Lagoon, which is kind of the tourist one. It's really nice, but it's very touristy. And that was very sort of she, and then we went to one that was in the middle of a canyon where you had to hike to get there. And it was just a tiny little pool for like no more than like 10 people. And then we went to one, our favorite one was this place called Secret Lagoon, which felt like it was for locals. Like it felt very unpretentious. And it was just like, this is what we do on Thursday afternoon. We get off work and we go to the pool and we sit in there. And it's, I don't know. It definitely felt like we were doing something. It's always nice to feel like a local. Yeah. A little bit. Yeah. For sure. If you're going to be a tourist, be a tourist. Go see the touristy shit. It's touristy shit for a reason. But maybe once over the course of the week to be amongst normal people living like they live is kind of fun.
The worst thing, though, would be, and I would do this, in that spot doing something ugly and American. Yeah. You're trying to fit in, and then you're just like, how dare you?
I think that being in New York helps.
Yeah. Good point.
Is that we're used to being around people who have different cultures and different traditions. And so even though we may be ugly Americans, we're not like immediately suspicious of people who are acting in a way that's different than us. Do you know what I mean? That it's like, well, clearly I do it the normal way and everybody around me is a weirdo. Like we don't have that, Camry and I, at least. I hope.
It sounds like the Steamboat Springs and Steamboat, Colorado. I think it's a similar thing. But regardless, I just remember I went in them when I was maybe in high school. I think we were like 16 or 17, me and my buddies, when we were out there skiing. And I just recall looking around at one point and realizing that everybody was naked. We weren't. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, this is awesome. There's naked women in these hot springs with us. And then it became a different experience. It's like, I wish someone would have told these high school boys there's going to be a bunch of nude people before we showed up.
Yeah, there was nobody naked.
Damn it.
But it had probably been a long time since I'd just even been around that many bathing suited people. It's not like I don't go to beaches and stuff. So that was, and that was another thing is like, I'm not someone who's particularly comfortable in a bathing suit.
Well, you were one of those old timey ones.
I do. Yeah. The suspenders, horizontal stripes. And I carry around one of those old timey barbells with me. and a handlebar mustache.
That's weird that you do all of that, but yeah,
I know
okay.
it's just to go swimming. But I thought, like, all right, man, if I'm gonna be able to just be gross in my swimsuit anywhere, might as well be in a country with less people than live in Queens.
Well, look at you. You come back to the States and your New York Knicks are in the playoffs. It's all going well. It's very exciting for you. And I'm jealous because I can't every year around this time, a whole bunch of people I know and like get real excited for the playoffs. Now, if you're a Knicks fan, they were there last year, but it's different this year. You were telling me.
No, 10 years ago they were there.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
I nailed it. But you're very excited about this. You're very into this. This is a big deal for New Yorkers who love the Knicks. And
this is weird because it very much goes against. It's very off-brand for me. It is
for you.
My Knicks fandom.
Yeah.
But it's completely sincere and very long. Since 1993, I've been a Knicks fan.
Wow.
And I would say that especially the last couple of years, the time spent either watching, reading, or listening about the Knicks and the NBA in general, but mostly the Knicks, maybe borders on unhealthy. There's definitely more productive things I could do, but now there's just so much content between different, social media feeds or podcasts. Every time I watch the Knicks now, there's a site called Knicks Film School, and I generally watch the post game where two dudes sort of talk about the game, or sometimes more. But it takes up a lot of my time, and but I feel sort of vindicated. I've stuck through. The Knicks have been like historically awful since the year 2000. They made the playoffs once since then, and like I was saying off mic. That one year was a bit of an anomaly. It was a bunch of old veterans that they signed. It was kind of a mercenary crew. This is very different. It's like a lot of homegrown players who they drafted or players that they, picked up that other teams didn't want. And it's super exciting. And I don't get too in the weeds about it, but they just won a playoff series last night. And now in the next round, they're going to be playing the Miami Heat, which were their old nemesis from the 90s. That's right. And so it's a lot of storylines, and it's very exciting.
Well, I love that you're loving it. Enjoy it, because it may not last much longer or next year. And so it's like, I don't know. I think there's always this balance. I've been feeling that way too, with, guilt if you're not being, quote, productive, if you're not being responsible, if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing because you're really enjoying something else that's not unhealthy. It's just not maybe as, quote, productive and as responsible. And I hate that feeling, because what is life? And trying to find the balance. So I'm happy you're enjoying it. And I say enjoy it and live it up, buddy.
Well, and it's hard because I don't, without getting too in the weeds of my own personal life or whatever, I don't have that many avenues, emotional avenues these days.
But that's why it's good, I think.
Yeah. I don't do a lot of socializing. I'm not doing as many sets as I would prefer at XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And so it really has become a bucket that I sort of pour a lot of my emotional energy into, for better or for worse. And in years past, the weird thing about this year is that usually it's kind of a nice little arc where it all wraps up around my birthday, because the Knicks are out of it by then. Do you know what I mean? Like they're out of playoff contention. And so it's like, all right, now it's time for me to transition back to my life. Whereas like now, depending on how this goes, this could go until mid-June, if they were to keep winning. And that's like a lot longer of a time to be invested.
I think that, not that you're asking for my advice, but I'm thinking about my own life. And I think that having kind of seasonal interests and passions, things that happen around the same time of year is great. And then sometimes they end, and then you don't have something to replace it with. And this is what you do during this time.
This is like this is the only sport I give a shit about. Like,
right.
I don't care about football, don't care about baseball, don't care about anything. So it's like once NBA season is done, I then move on to other things. So then I move on to NBA Summer League and the draft and all that. But yeah, it's definitely, I feel like, very happy that I stuck with this for the past 20 years when most people were jumping ship.
I don't speak with a lot of nuance when I'm talking about like sports fanatics, and I certainly grew up loving sports and still do. But I generally think of people who are year-round sports fanatics, and it becomes a thing that I get a little judgmental. I'm like, man, that's the only thing you care about is there's always a sport.
That's the thing. That's why I say it's off brand, because I've sort of made my adult life making fun of those people.
No, I think that's what I'm saying. I think it's healthy when it's like seasonal, or it's, not all of the time.
Well, and I think honestly, and this is maybe just my bias, but I just think the NBA attracts a smarter variety of person than other sports do. Not even smarter is not the right word. Cooler, less conservative, more liberal, funnier, just sharper, baseball too, but baseball tends to be a lot of old heads and a lot of traditionalists. And this is the way things have always been done. I mean, football far and away attracts the worst people.
Is it, let me just minimize what you said. Is it hard to be super racist and love basketball, much less the NBA?
Some people seem to manage.
I know. I'm sure they do. Don't get me wrong.
But
I'm sure a lot of people.
Though. I would say it's got the lowest percentage of out and out racists for sure.
Yeah.
You get a lot of, but then like Phil Jackson, who is the, Hall of Fame coach of the Chicago Bulls.
He said this week that things are in the NBA they've gotten too political or something. I don't know. That's
the sort of subtle racism that you get. It's like, hey, shut up and dribble. Like, let the business people don't water this down for us white fans by needing to be treated like human beings, please. That's the sort of racism you get in the NBA, more so than the direct, it's, there's not nearly, definitely the players in the NBA are more empowered socially than players in other leagues, without a doubt.
And I'm just reading the Phil Jackson headlines from this week. Knicks fans let him know how they felt about that by this week. They chanted, "Fuck Phil Jackson" during the playoff celebration.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's why, because
I could not agree any more strongly.
I want to ask you, as I always do, just about a couple things that happened this week and get your take on them.
Sure. Yeah, we haven't talked about anything real.
That's okay. Tucker Carlson has been fired. I think it's a huge deal. Such a huge deal that I I turned around a special show that they dedicated with 5 different voices who I cared about talking about it. I think it's a massive deal. I think he was the most terrible, scary, impactful, damaging person in all of right-wing media, and extremely influential on policymakers. And so to have him not be there at Fox News, I think, is a major triumph for our culture, our society, progress. Those are my thoughts.
I mean, it's, the suddenness of it was very jarring, and it makes you wonder, what is about to come out that would have made this happen so quickly. The fact that he left on Friday and did not know that was his last show, and that I guess early in the day on Monday, they were still running promos for his show that night. And so I don't know what happened there. It's delightful, whatever it is. It's TBD. Rachel Maddow, I remember on Monday night, had a long opening block about sort of following the lineage of Father Coughlin, the sort of right-wing media figures, through Rush Limbaugh, through Sean Hannity, through Glenn Beck, and sort of that there's always sort of a next man up, essentially. Sure. And probably, I don't know who the heir apparent to that is. Part of me worries it's like a Ben Shapiro or a Charlie Kirk, although he's a fucking moron and wouldn't work. But, these people like the Tucker Carlsons, they get big enough that they think that they're bigger than the network. And then eventually the network starts to almost be like, oh, really? I don't know that it's that simple. I mean, I don't know if you read any of those reports a couple days ago that it might have had something to do with Rupert Murdoch breaking off his.
Gabriel Sherman and the Vanity Fair. I read it even on the show.
I don't know whether that's true, but it would be hilarious if it was, because it's like that. There it is in a nutshell. Like these people sort of making these massive cultural decisions on a completely petty personal grievance, basis. It's hilarious. No, my ex fiance likes this guy. Fuck him. Get him out of here.
Whoever it is, I hope that it's not an overtly Christian nationalist. I think that was one of the big issues with Tucker Carlson, is how much he was saying that if you're not Christian, or more importantly, if you are Christian, you're being, you're in danger. You're being discriminated against. And so I'd love to believe that reporting, and that whoever it is not going to be so overtly. I bet you it does minimize their audience.
Well, I think that was one of the things that made the Tucker Carlson phenomenon singular, if in fact it was, is that he had kind of been given the stamp, the elite stamp, before he kind of came out as a raging white nationalist. He was, we all remember Bowtie Tucker Carlson on CNN, like he was almost kind of a cartoon character, like a professional wrestling heel. There's a character I'm playing. I'm Little Lord Fauntleroy. I'm the sort of mouthpiece for sort of rich conservatism in the United States. And I'm a young guy wearing a bow tie. So doesn't that make me interesting and a little bit of a character? But he had buy-in from the culture in general as a serious person to be taken seriously. And so when he then kind of started drifting towards white nationalism and all that, he still had the cachet of having been a media figure for the past 25 years or whatever. And so to me, breaking that chain might end up being the best thing to come of this, is that for a while, the sort of white nationalists, like, oh, we have a friend now in the sort of national media firmament, and we can sort of funnel our garbage straight into the minds of every 65-year-old angry dad in the country. And I just don't know who else has both the sort of leanings towards white nationalism, but also the sort of buy-in from the media firmament. I don't know that there's anybody else that can kind of join those two.
Yeah, no, I hope you're right about that. I'm sure they'll come up with somebody, or that person will evolve into that, potentially knowing where the ratings live. But yeah, I hope you're right about that.
But to me, but again, though, it's like, yeah, there's somebody's going to try, but it's kind of like the thing with trying to recreate Trump, is that like nobody else had been a celebrity. Nobody else was sort of saying this sort of bomb throwing, red meat, white grievance bullshit like Trump was, who also had been a celebrity for 30 years, was like a brand name personality that everybody knew about, and also had this weird, I don't know if you want to call it charisma, but just this sort of verbal diarrhea, just this silliness, the silliness factor that it was fun. He was funny to watch. And I just don't know. And you see all these people who try to be Trump, DeSantis or Kerry Lake or whoever, and they just don't have that special sauce. They don't have all of those components working together at once. And so I'm sure somebody will come along eventually, but I don't see anybody out there right now.
I'm surprised
who's going to just step in.
I'm surprised Kerry Lake's not being talked about for that spot on Fox News.
I could see her trying to be that person for sure.
Her career was in television before she went into politics.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah, I think she had a better chance in Arizona. I don't know that her shtick plays anywhere else, but
I have gone hard against Don Lemon is not the choice of words that I wanted to use, but I have been very critical of Don Lemon for a long time, mainly because I worked with Don Lemon. I got to know Don Lemon, and I immediately did not like him, and I was good friends with a guy he dated for a very long time. And I don't think he's a good guy. I don't think he's a good guy at all. Then there's the on-air Don Lemon, who's dumb and arrogant and self-serving and doesn't have a lot of charisma and is, I think, very sexist against women. And then I find out that Al Sharpton's like demanding CNN tell us why they fired him. And it's like, I don't want this. I rarely say this, but I don't want this to be a race thing. I absolutely want CNN to have an anchor in prime time that is black, that is gay, that is beautiful like Don Lemon is. And I think there's 100 guys out there and women out there that are like that. And at the same time, by the way, they're like demoting Laura Coates, it would seem. That's it. That's me on Don Lemon. Do you have any thoughts about him that you'd like to add? Or CNN?
I do not watch CNN at all, like under any circumstances. And it's not like I have something against it. I just find it incredibly. Why would I eat frozen pizza if I have a real pizza next to me? Do you know what I mean?
It's like there's another choice.
It feels so sterilized, or just so. It just feels like empty calories. Like CNN, it doesn't feel like news. It doesn't feel like insight. And I'm sure that there are great people there, but they in my mind will always be the Where's the Missing Plane network. You know, like
Don Lemon covered that.
Yeah, but I'm saying that has kind of defined their sort of voice for the past 25 years is sort of the shiny object network. And they've, tried to become kind of more engaged in this sort of culture, or not culture war, but, this sort of partisan, once Don Lemon started getting, started spouting off, I don't know. It just, I just don't see any point to watching CNN.
Fair enough. I like that answer more than anything.
So I don't really have strong opinions about Don Lemon, and I don't feel bad that he's not working.
I asked you to come prepared with 15 minutes on Don Lemon, and that's what you give me, a CNN.
The only thing I ever see about Don Lemon is when it goes viral. Like, that's the only time I even know that he exists. So,
last thing I want to ask you was your thoughts on this week. Joe Biden announced he was going to be running for re-election. And this just broke. I don't know if you saw this, but he's replaced Kamala Harris with Dianne Feinstein as a running mate. So they're really trying to lock up that senior vote. And I think that's a bad move.
Comparison to look young and vital.
Yeah, I don't think that's that's the better joke. He's bringing her on to make him look like a spry.
Yeah. I mean, that Dianne Feinstein situation is just
bad.
It's real bad.
Well,
we
had a really thoughtful talk
about it. Embarrassing to
with
see
our
all
friend
these senators.
Bill Boyle last week, and the scuttlebutt in DC it's their staff trying to maintain their power,
100%,
their jobs,
100%.
Yeah.
It's like they're a bunch. It's I can't believe I'm about to say this. Gleema Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings.
I don't get the reference.
Did you see Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
When they go to that one king, the king of Rohan, and he's like under a spell and his like eyes are all glazed over, and there's like a guy whispering into his ear, and he's clearly like the power behind the throne because the king has been put under a spell or whatever. I mean, it's that sort of situation where it's like, it's a bunch of staff people and underlings trying to protect their influence because they've basically been calling the shots for however many months / years. And it's disgusting. And it's also disgusting to see other senators like Debbie Stabenow and Ted Lieu, his representative, sort of like defending it. Of like, I'm not going to tell her, what it would.
Oh, there's a lot more. There's a long list of senators who are basically, defending it or not.
It's embarrassing. And this idea of like, would you have told Strom Thurmond to retire? People did all the time. The difference was that Strom Thurmond was at least physically present. He was there. And also, he wasn't a Democrat. So of course, why would I call for? Yeah, it really, it's bad news. And it's why Democrats get their asses kicked.
And back to Biden. Are you pretty fired up, ready to go?
No. And there's the appeal of Biden. I don't want to get fired up. I want to have a normal country, and I want to, I understand that there will need to be a firing up at some point. And there will be a firing up. I mean, the Republicans will make sure of that by being themselves and being fucking garbage. But I'm not fired up about Joe Biden. I don't want to be. I don't need to be. And most people don't need to be. This idea of like, I don't ever see a Biden bumper sticker or a Biden t-shirt. And you never will.
I think there's the point. Too many things to fire us up. I mostly agree with you, except for the point of selling a candidate to get votes. It's helpful to have somebody that's exciting and vibrant and funny and out there governing, which is the thing that matters and is more in line of, I think, what you're saying. I certainly agree with, especially now, that it's good to have somebody who sings with the South Korean president, or shows up after a tragedy and says the right thing, comforts families, kind of a figurehead. But they don't need to be drawing attention to themselves every day and making it about them. They can have a really smart people that work in the administration that do amazing things. And that's what Joe Biden's done, got more done than anybody else in our lifetime. But there's a difference between like winning elections and turning people out as a candidate, as a product, as a salesman. And if you don't, if you're not going to get out there, those criticisms are fair that he's not going to get out there, because he's being someone that age is not a great candidate is the argument. Candidate versus government.
And I get that. I mean, the age thing you can't deny or whatever, but I'm just saying it's like, I don't need the actual candidate this time around to be lighting me on fire
especially
emotionally.
known quantity. That's a good point.
Abortion rights, voting rights, the environment, like these are things that give me the passion to make sure that I get out and vote. I don't necessarily need the candidate himself to be, breakdancing for me, or being on cooking shows and flipping a perfect omelet. Like I don't need that.
Both those examples. That's actually, it's so weird.
The world is animating enough right now.
I need both of those.
You do.
Oh,
you
have
need someone breakdancing while flipping an omelet.
Yes, or else I'm not even interested in what you care about. No,
do you know what I mean? Like the world is animating enough right now. There's enough really horrible shit and also good shit. There's enough to be excited about in the world that I would like a calm, cool center, please.
Is it true that you have been hoarding abortion pills for sale at a profit?
There's so many like inappropriate jokes that just like race through my head that I probably would have made 10 years ago about like having a lot of premarital sex and whatnot. But I don't know who told you that. That is a bald-faced lie, which makes sense because you're a bald head person.
Oh, well then.
I don't know where that came from. I'm sorry.
I think
you can edit this part out.
Well, I would edit the best part out. Thank you very much for joining me as always. It's great to see you and have you back. And I'm so happy you had such a great trip. Everybody should go look at all the pictures that you and Cambry shared. And of course, subscribe to New Music for Olds. And we will talk hopefully next week.
Indeed we shall.
Yeah, indeed we shall. Christian Finnegan, newmusicforolds.substack.com. Go follow him on the social medias, watch his stand-up, and support him and support me with a paid subscription if you haven't already. Please sign up, patreon.com/Pete Dominic, standuppwithpete.com. Woo, that's it. That's all I've got for you today, but I'm still working, taping a few more interviews, and might put out something on the weekend. I threaten to do it. Sometimes I do, but we'll see. So stay tuned or don't. How do you stay tuned to a podcast? If something drops, I hope you'll listen and enjoy it. Have a great weekend. And today's quote ender, Pema Chodron, who I love, who says, rather than being disheartened by the uncertainty of life, what if we accepted it and relaxed into it? What if we said, yes, this is the way it is. This is what it means to be human, and decided to sit down and enjoy the ride. Oh, easier said than done, but thanks, Pema Chodron. Good luck out there.
I think you're driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. Point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right. We got to speak up, we got to reach Rise up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up and show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.